I'm excited to introduce David Brown. He's part of the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra as a bassist, and he is president of the Vancouver Musicians Association. What's the exact acronym for that?
The VMA,
Okay,
which is a local of the AFM, which is the American Federation of Musicians.
Perfect.
And it's an institution here in Vancouver that's been around for 100 years. So really since the beginning of Vancouver's history.
So as you can see, David is a huge part of the Vancouver music community, and I'm really excited to get some insight into his approach to music as a classical artist, and also as his role as a catalyst in the Vancouver music community, and his drive behind his art and why he really loves music. So what really drives your art? Is it like what is the fire behind your art? Is there like something that happened very young in life, or like you've always listened to music, or like there's one thing you really caught on to and you're like, yeah, I really want that. Do you want to? Do you have
Sure.
into that?
Well, I grew up in a pretty musical family, and my mother had studied piano, and I was born in New Zealand, and my family moved to Vancouver when I was about 8. And the first thing I think my mother bought, when we moved here, was a piano. So I've got there were 5 kids in my family, and so we all studied music. We all started out by singing, taking singing lessons, and pretty soon that branched into instrumental music. So my sister was the first who started playing harp, and then I was always looking at double bass players. When I went to the Symphony, my parents took me to the VSO when I was a teenager, and I just found myself gravitating towards the bass section. So really what happened is the Vancouver Youth Orchestra, which is still going here in Vancouver, doing really well, and it's actually conducted by our principal oboe player, Roger Cole. And I was contacted, and I was told that if I wanted to learn to play the bass, they would lend me an instrument as long as I took lessons. So I started taking lessons with the principal bass then of the Symphony, and basically that sort of started a whole career. Yeah. I had no even idea about being a professional musician. I just loved music, and I got involved in all kinds of community orchestras and groups and chamber ensembles. And then I got a lucky break when I was about 17. I won a competition to go down to Los Angeles, which is an 8-week program at the University of Southern California. Yeah. And I got introduced to kids who were on the career track. They were in university already. Most of them were older than I was. They were all super motivated, and so it was just like, wake up call. This is what you have to do. This is how hard you have to work if you want to be a professional musician. So that kind of was a great opportunity looking back. And then I started going to the National Youth Orchestra, which is an incredible program that runs every summer. I did that for about 4 years, and started playing with the Symphony as an extra musician. And then I went to Juilliard, and after that there was an opening in the Symphony, and I auditioned and got in and came back to Vancouver. So
wow. Yeah, that's a very distinguished career, like even before coming to Vancouver. It's awesome.
Well, I think, the nice thing about being a musician is, the one-to-one relationship that you have with teachers, that's pretty unique, I think, in our culture. So having that intimacy where you have people who really are looking out and take an interest in your progress and help you advance, and also, really keep an eye on you and make sure you're doing the work you need to do, like the reality of just how hard you have to work and how good people are, so it's a great process. And I think, as you were talking about sports earlier,
sure.
That's the same kind of discipline, right? And the sense of a group enterprise where you are really benefiting from everybody's contribution, so you have that wonderful outcome, when everybody's in it and everybody's really producing. Like playing in the Symphony, you just have that sense that we're all really striving to play at the highest level we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it seems like, music is like a huge part of, what you believe is really great in everyday life, and also like bringing out that passion. And I'm super excited that you were able to follow that and just give it 150% every single day. And I'm really excited that now a lot of people sort of do see that not only in just to become the famous or something like that, or the absolute best, but really, if you really love the art, then that's what drives your career and just making great music.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, Dan, because, you know, when I look at the artists, I mean, I love all kinds of music, and I particularly love jazz, and I have so much respect for some of the young jazz artists who are writing incredible music, and how disciplined they are, and also how you know, just committed to their art form they are, and that's really inspiring to see. Yeah. And I think when you look at a career, you know, like what I consider an artist is somebody who's involved in the process their entire life, you know, and just always has that desire to go further. So, you know, you have great experiences, but you're always looking for the next thing you're going to get involved in. So I think that's one of the things that you see with all really committed artists, is that they're always looking to advance. They never satisfied just sort of staying in the same place. Yeah. And that's a really great, I mean, it can be the cause of a lot of concern. Sometimes it's really can be like you're just going like, am I getting better, or am, you know, and that's progress, isn't it? It's not linear. Sometimes, you know, you make great strides, and other times you really struggle, and it can take a while, and then you make a breakthrough, and it's like, oh, that's great, you know, I'm actually getting better, you know. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I think we're so lucky to be in a field where really the sky's the limit. It's a lifelong, many lifetimes really, to become a master at anything, right? You know, so you just have that sense that you're involved in a process which is so worthy and has so much to offer, so much to explore. Yeah, like what does your art mean to you? I think it would be really cool to maybe get some insight into what playing classical music is really means to you, and like what inspires you about playing that type of art form. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, there's a social side to music too, and I think when you're, you know, able to play with other musicians and get out and you know, go into a project, whatever it happens to be, there's that joy of seeing fellow musicians playing other instruments that you really, you know, players you really respect and want to play with. So that's a big part of it, I think, is just being with compatriots who are fun to play with. And then the second thing is just the challenge of different kinds of music. So, you know, I play in form with the symphony, which is something I've done for almost 40 years. So it's, you know, I know the forum I'm going into when I go to an orchestra rehearsal. But there's always music that comes up I've never played before, and there are things that I've played many times. So, you know, there's various levels of complexity in terms of learning and things that you're familiar with. And then I play a lot of modern music too, a lot of new music. I play in an ensemble called Turning Point, which commissions a lot of young composers to write for it. And you never know what you're going to get, right? It's a collaboration with a composer, and we have workshops and sit down and sort of see what this composer is about and what they're looking for, and just try to come in with a clean slate. And absolutely, you know. Yeah, I love it. Like that excellence and dedication to bringing that piece, whatever it is, just to fruition and making it awesome. Yeah. So like, I really like that, you know, the dedication part and like the hard work that comes in. For me, I think it's very similar. Like, I just love the challenge, you know. I love getting into each little nuance of the piece and trying to bring it fully to life, or find something new in it that maybe somebody else hasn't seen before. So I think that's really exciting. Sure. And so what do you hope the audience gets from your music? Like when you play on stage and you're able to bring all of this hard work and dedication and bring out the what the music really means to you, and just to show all that hard work, what do you hope your audience gets out of it? Maybe like a reaction, or they just become fully enveloped and taken to a new space, or what's your take on that? Well, I think that's a wide-ranging question, because, you know, I think there's music that is inherently entertainment. Like last night I played a pops concert with the Symphony, pretty much Broadway tunes with very, very good singers. I think one of the singers had sung, you know, tunes from Phantom like 2,000 times. So obviously he's like a very established, you know, stage artist, and as they all were. So, you know, afterwards, going back to the parking lot, I encountered some of the audience, and they were just thrilled with the show. You know, it was like everything they wanted to hear, tunes that were familiar to them. Then if I play a show that's like more contemporary, more cutting edge type music, you hope to challenge your audience. You know, you hope to do something they've never heard before, and you hope that they, that they can hear something for the first time, and even if they don't understand it, that they have a, a desire to kind of get inside the music and experience it, and they're open-minded.
Yeah.
I think that's really the most you can ask from an audience, is that they go in with an open mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And like, what do you get out of sharing your music with the audience? Like, I love how much dedication you're putting into your art. And I've seen the Symphony Orchestra play a number of times, and I've seen a lot of the players play outside of the orchestra as well. And I really love how each aspect of every part of the piece is thought about and performed to such a high level. And so you put so much into it, and just brings either entertainment or just a new look at that art. What do you get out of it? What do you feel at the end of the day, or after a concert, or after you get a really hard part in a tune that was quite difficult? What do you really feel after that?
Well, I think there's a sense of satisfaction when something goes really well. I mean, if you're playing really hard music, there's always that kind of tightrope walking, that can happen. Am I going to get this, or are we going to get through this piece? If, the harder it is, if it's rhythmically complex or has really hard, as you're saying, like hard pitch sets in it or whatever. Yeah. But I think, there's a variety of different challenges that come in any kind of music. And one is, of course, to produce a beautiful sound. You're trying to play different styles really well, whether it's classical like Mozart, which is almost unattainable. It's like musicians hold that in such high regard because, it's kind of crystalline in nature, like being able to play every note beautifully, beautiful intonation, beautiful nuances. And then there's other music that's really hard to play because it's just rhythmically really challenging, or really complex in other ways, putting it together. So, some music really does need to have a conductor, and a conductor can facilitate things. And when we get guest conductors, we may do a piece like a Brahms symphony or a Sibelius symphony, and it may be something we've played many times before, but that particular conductor has a new take on it. So you go in also with an open mind that you're going to play the piece maybe a little differently than you've played it before. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, like I love it, just like the excellence and then the sense of accomplishment. I love it. For me, that's a huge part of the reason why I looked at the bass. I was like, wow, this bass is pretty cool, looking at this one here. And I've had a couple before, and I ended up actually, I love the bass so much that I decided to go to university for music. And I was like, okay, either get a bass or get a car. So I ended up getting a bass, and riding the bus, carrying my bass to university for the first quite a long time of university, actually. Yeah. And it's just, I just love it, and there's no other real quantifiable reason. I just love the challenge, and I love making great music.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the bass, because we both play electric bass and string bass. Yeah. I think the string bass is an instrument that you really get physical with. Like you can really dig in, when you're playing with a bow or playing pizzicato, playing like a jazz tune or whatever.
Absolutely.
It really, the instrument resonates. It gives you back a lot of like physical energy, and you can really dig into it, which I really like about it too.
For
the fact
sure.
that there's always something you can really have fun with it, and it's also so authoritative, in terms of laying down the kind of the harmonic foundation of music. So
Absolutely.
You have a lot of freedom as a bass player to really influence the music.
Yeah, and when there's a good one too, because it's as many people can see, there's no frets on the upright bass. So if you're able to play that one in tune and still lay down that groove, then that's a good bass player on the upright. And I've seen David play before, and man, he's in tune. Well, that's spot on. I love it.
That's one of the priorities for sure, isn't it? Yeah, even playing something simply, beautifully is that's
Absolutely.
First and foremost having a good sound and playing in tune.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so, with what attitude would you recommend students approach music? Maybe some insights into what you've learned over time, or like maybe a certain perspective that you learned on music that maybe at the beginning you're like, I'm beating myself up too much, or I really to appreciate certain shows, or what's your take on something that you would recommend to upcoming musicians or students who are just really getting into music, and some insight you've learned?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important thing for young people to be aware of. I think is that there are many different ways that one can go about, getting into music.
Yeah.
And obviously we all find something that appeals to us, that is that kind of magnetic attraction that makes us want to go further into something, whatever it is. So I think one of the things that I try to always instill with people who are coming for lessons, people who want to actually learn to play the instrument a little more formally, is good technique. Because even if you only have a few lessons, learning how to actually hold the instrument well and having a good hand position and that kind of thing, those sorts of things are really going to stand you in good stead to build a foundation on. It's like a house, right? You want to build it on a good foundation. So that's important. But I think it's also good if you have ideas of what kind of music you want to play, that you follow those. So if you want to be an improvisational musician or creative musician making your own tunes and that kind of thing, you can do that at the same time that maybe you're advancing your technique through more of a formal process of study. But I'd say, get out to concerts, listen to lots of music, listen to why you don't like something, and be evaluating what's good and what's bad, so using your discretionary powers to kind of determine, as you become more sophisticated as a musician yourself, you can learn a lot from the diagnostics, right? Of listening with really acute hearing and paying attention and looking at every instrumentalist you encounter and seeing what they do, and and just basically being a sponge, right? Learn as much as you can about as many things as you can.
Yeah. When I was working in another industry before music, my nickname, I was working with a lot of people who had been in the industry for a really long time, and my nickname was actually Sponge Dan. The reason why is because every single thing that everybody told me, I always either took notes or I remembered it and then I applied it right away.
Using your critical thinking skills, right?
Absolutely.
You might be told something by one teacher, and then somebody else may tell you something that conflicts with it. So then you have to evaluate, what is it that is that's true for me, and try them both, and become discerning. And then at some point you'll have enough information that you know how you want to proceed. Yeah,
and then you start to develop your own sort of style and own sort of way of either leadership in a band or sound or way of playing with other people, and that's super exciting. And one thing that I'd really love to chat about a little bit is there's so many different ways to play with different people and so many ways for musicians to get into music, and I think it's really exciting that you're able to have a role as a catalyst in the Vancouver music community as the president of the Vancouver Musicians Association, and want to give us some insight into maybe different things that you think would be really valuable for musicians and upcoming musicians to hear?
Sure. Well, I think, when you look at a music involvement, some people just stay on the peripheries as amateurs, and they become, some of them are very, very good players, but they have other careers. And I've taught a lot at summer camps where you have adult amateurs who are doctors and engineers and lawyers and all sorts of things, but they love music, and they love to play music and probably do it on a weekly basis, whether they get together with friends and play chamber music and that kind of thing. So, I think amateur music making, amateur really doesn't mean that it's not good. It just means that somebody does it not as a career, right? Yeah. And I think music, the more that people are doing music and taking part in it, the better for society and for individual health and well-being. Absolutely. But there are people that also want to become professionals. They actually want to make a living as musicians because that's what they want to put all their time into. And let's face it, if you are spending 8 hours a day doing another job, you only have so much energy. At the end of the day, it's pretty hard to come home and practice or have the time to get out and play with other people. And so I think if you are going to really consider being in music as a career, then you have to start applying the business sense that you would have if you were in any other field, like if you were starting your own business, So I think the rise of the entrepreneurial musician is extremely important. And someone like yourself who has taken business courses and been involved in business, and then you're coming kind of taking those skills and applying them to music. and which is great for people who are going to be leaders and actually create projects and encourage other people to participate. So
one thing actually, just to clarify too, is I graduated from university for jazz music, and I've never taken a business course in my life. So I think also like for a lot of artists who are coming out, being restricted if you're unable to take the time to go to university or even take a course or learn from somebody else. I think there's a lot of resources that everybody can take. Like I remember working both in music and in other industries where people would ask me a question, and if I really needed to look like I knew what I was talking about, I'd take out my smartphone and I'd be, hold on one moment. They'd be like, oh, he's replying to a text message, But really, I'm just Googling the answer. And all information is really so close to your fingertips that it's really not too hard to find a lot of information. So if you feel information is the thing holding you back, or tactics, Google, man. Definitely. That's how I think a lot of things today, and like being entrepreneurial, is really about coming up with your own sort of questions and then asking them and figuring them out. And I think when it comes from that same sort of role in learning music and going into a passage, especially in orchestral music, where some passages are very hard. It takes a couple times, maybe, the technique of getting to the end result, and maybe you'll play it differently and you'll find that way is much easier. And in the same way, working as a musician or in any other industry, to come to that end entrepreneurial result is sort of like coming and figuring out a different path. There's not really one set way, and if you're able to put in the hard work and just love sort of the process of getting there, is a really exciting role, I think, in music.
Well, I agree. I think it's really very gratifying to feel like you have enough of a handle on the business acumen and the ability to do project management, in a sense, to put something together that you would really like to see happen, right? And organizational skills, and obviously some good business sense too.
Absolutely.
And how does that develop? I mean, I guess it comes through experience the same way that learning to play an instrument does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Having the confidence to go to, to start to look for work and be able to negotiate rates and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to market yourself and, do it in a way that you're putting out the information about what you can offer.
For sure.
And that I think comes from, again, probably observing people who are good at it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. And in some things, the same thing too. Like if you really don't feel that that's not part of who you are, then maybe find somebody else who really loves what you're doing in art and who can be, the other half, and really help share your sort of art or connect you with other people on their skills. Maybe they're very good at the entrepreneurial side. And I think it's definitely very good to go in yourself. But if you are 100% sure, you'd rather work for 100 years on only art rather than spending like 15 minutes to Google something, to figure out that business aspect, then maybe it's better to find somebody who their core is they love that stuff, just as much as you love music. And I think it's really cool, and like from what I've seen with a lot of different artists, both really work. And just having people like David and the Vancouver Musicians Association can be some of the help in that sort of thing. So I think it's super exciting what you're doing.
There are a lot of challenges. Of course, we've seen a lot of changes with technology, and I mean, with change comes sometimes people, when you look at history, people probably can't make sense of things that are changing quickly around them. But as you're talking about the fact that we have the internet now and the ability to find information, to connect with people that would normally would have taken weeks, if not months, sending something to them, snail mail.
Absolutely.
And the ability to market yourself much more cheaply, because you don't have to send press kits out now by mail. You can just have it up on a website. So knowing a little bit about a lot, I think, is really good. And then, as you're saying, drilling down, if you have a specific thing, like if you're not going to learn how to do website development, there are a lot of people out there who can. So knowing that time management and allocating, skill sets out to people that are really good in those things, I think is also still really a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
To draw on resources that are already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would just want to mention one thing too, for young bands and for people who want to tour the United States. We've just had an election, and we still don't know really what's going to happen in the U.S. in terms of access to U.S. markets. But we do have something called a P2 visa program. So if you join the Musicians Association, you then have the ability to apply for a P2 if you're going to tour, or anytime you're going to go to the United States and access the U.S. market. We do have the reciprocal agreement with the United States in place. I will say it's not cheap, and it does take time. So if you're going to do it, you need to give it a lot of lead time, almost 3 or 4 months to apply for the paperwork and have it processed in the U.S. But we do have a ton of musicians who are joining us all the time in order to go to have that, because the U.S. market, of course, is so much larger than the Canadian one, and that's what a lot of the media is too, right? So if you want to be noticed, it's almost inevitable you're going to want to go on tour in the U.S.
At some point, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much, David. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out.
My pleasure.
Yes. And I'm glad, you've given us so much to mull over, and you've even given me a ton to learn. I'm going to check this out, and I'm super excited to, get into everything more. And I hope that we're able to work much more together in the future. So yeah, thank you guys for checking out this week's musician interview. Subscribe for upcoming interviews with similar people to David, coming out, giving us great insight into their approach to music and what they really love in their art. So thanks again for checking us out, and have a great day.